Marcus Ashford stands on a stranger's porch, staring at two 4-year-old faces that mirror his own. The twins don't know him. Their mother's voice cracks through the phone. You don't get to be their father just because biology says so. 4 years too late, billionaire. 4 years too late. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The champagne was already flowing when Sienna walked into the ballroom, her resignation letter folded in the silk clutch that matched her burgundy dress. Marcus Ashford stood at the center of his empire's annual gala, surrounded by admirers, investors, and sycophants. His laughter echoing off the crystal chandeliers like he owned not just the room, but the very air people breathed. She watched him from the entrance. This man she'd loved with a ferocity that terrified her. This man whose eyes had once traced her face like she was the only masterpiece worth studying. Now those same eyes slid past her as if she were part of the wallpaper, elegant but forgettable, present but irrelevant. 3 years. She'd given him 3 years of late nights approving his deals, early mornings reviewing contracts he was too important to read himself, afternoons deflecting the press when his temper made headlines. 3 years of being Marcus Ashford's executive assistant, his right hand, his secret keeper, his lover when the office emptied and the city lights became their only witnesses. 3 years of being everything except what she'd foolishly let herself dream about being. His equal, his partner, the woman he'd choose in daylight instead of just darkness. Marcus lifted his glass, and the room fell silent with the kind of reverence people reserve for gods and tyrants. To another record-breaking year, he announced, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, carrying that particular confidence of a man who'd never been told no, and meant it. To the brilliant minds who make Ashford Industries unstoppable. His eyes swept the crowd, pausing on his chief financial officer, his head of acquisitions, his marketing director. They landed on Sienna for half a heartbeat before moving on. And to all of you who believe in the vision, she felt something crack inside her chest. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet finality of a door closing. He didn't even see her. Not really. Not the way she'd convinced herself he did during those 2 a.m. conversations in his office when he'd told her about his father's impossible expectations, about building an empire just to prove he could, about the loneliness that came with being Marcus Ashford. She'd thought those confessions meant something. She'd thought she meant something. Sienna moved through the crowd, her heels clicking against marble, each step a small declaration of intent. She reached him just as he was accepting congratulations from a silver-haired board member who kept calling him son, with paternal pride that made Marcus's jaw tighten imperceptibly. She knew that tell, knew all his tells, the way his left hand would flex when he was irritated, how his voice dropped half an octave when he was lying, the precise angle his eyebrow would arch when he found something genuinely amusing versus politely tolerating it. "Mr. Ashford," she said, her voice carrying the professional distance she'd perfected, the one that never betrayed how his cologne made her dizzy, or how she'd memorized the exact shade of blue his eyes turned when sunlight hit them through his office windows. "A moment of your time." He turned, and for a flash so brief she might have imagined it, something softened in his expression. "Sienna, you're stunning tonight." The compliment was automatic, empty, the kind of thing he'd say to any woman at any gala, and that realization burned worse than anything else. He was already turning back to the board member. "Can this wait until Monday? We're in the middle of something." "It can't, actually." She extended the envelope, creamy stationery that probably cost more than she'd spent on her dress. "My resignation, effective immediately." The words hit the space between them like a gunshot. The board member's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. Marcus went very still. That predator stillness she'd seen him use in hostile negotiations right before he destroyed someone's position. He took the envelope slowly, his fingers brushing hers, and she hated that her pulse still jumped at the contact. "This is a joke." His voice was low, dangerous, the tone that made junior executives stutter. "It's the most serious thing I've done in 3 years." She met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I'm done, Marcus. You don't just quit." He laughed, but it was ugly, sharp. "Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? The career opportunities, the connections, everything I've given you, given me?" The words came out quieter than she intended, but sharp enough to cut. You've given me nothing but breadcrumbs and midnight hours and the privilege of watching you pretend I don't exist every time the sun comes up. His jaw clenched. That meant she'd landed a hit. This is about us. There is no us. There's you, and there's your empire. And then there's everyone else scrambling for whatever attention you deign to offer. She felt her voice threatening to shake and forced steel into it. I'm tired of scrambling. Sienna. He reached for her arm, and she stepped back like his touch was fire. The movement was small, but everyone nearby noticed. Conversations stuttering into silence, heads turning with the scent of drama in the air. His eyes flashed with something that might have been anger, or might have been hurt. And 3 months ago, she would have stayed to find out which would have soothed whatever he was feeling, would have made herself smaller to fit into whatever space he had available. Not anymore. If you walk out that door, he said, his voice carrying now, echoing in the growing silence. Don't expect to come back. I don't chase, Sienna. I don't beg. And I sure as hell don't forgive people who embarrass me in front of my board. Good thing I'm not asking for any of those. She clutched her purse tighter, the resignation letter crinkling in his hand. I hope you find someone who can give you what I couldn't, Marcus. Someone who doesn't need sleep or dreams or the basic human courtesy of being acknowledged in daylight. Someone perfect for the life you've chosen. She turned before he could respond, before the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes could betray her, before she could do what her heart was screaming at her to do and take it all back. Apologize. Beg for the scraps she'd been surviving on. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea, faces blurring into a mosaic of shock and pity, and barely concealed glee at witnessing Marcus Ashford actually being challenged. Behind her, she heard him say something to the board member, heard his laugh ring out again, forced and brittle, but there, like her leaving was already forgotten, already irrelevant, already part of the past he'd buried under the next acquisition, the next deal, the next conquest. Sienna made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking, made it to the lobby before her vision went blurry, made it to her car before the first sob broke free, raw and painful, and somehow relieving, like lancing a wound that had been festering for 3 years. She drove home through streets that sparkled with Friday night energy, people laughing in restaurant windows, couples walking hand in hand, the whole city alive with possibility, while she felt like she'd just buried something precious. Her apartment was dark and quiet, and exactly the sanctuary she needed. She kicked off her heels, unzipped her dress, and stood in her bathroom staring at her reflection like she was meeting a stranger. Who had she become? When had she allowed herself to be reduced to someone who lived for moments stolen between meetings, who measured her worth by a man's distracted smiles, who'd convinced herself that being chosen in private was enough? Her mother would be ashamed. Her grandmother would be furious. The Sienna who'd graduated top of her class, who'd fought for every opportunity, who'd walked into Marcus Ashford's office 4 years ago and told him exactly why he needed to hire her despite having no executive assistant experience, that Sienna wouldn't recognize this version who'd accepted so little for so long. Her phone buzzed. Then again. And again. She didn't need to check to know it was Marcus. Rage texting now that the gala was over, now that the audience was gone. She turned the phone off and ran a bath, the kind she never had time for when she was at Marcus's beck and call, when his emergencies became her emergencies, when his schedule dictated her life. The hot water felt like rebellion. The silence felt like freedom. The tears felt like goodbye. She didn't know yet about the baby. Wouldn't know for another 3 weeks when her body started changing in ways that no amount of denial could explain. Wouldn't know that the night she finally stood up for herself was also the night everything became infinitely more complicated. Wouldn't know that Marcus Ashford, who never chased, who never begged, who never forgave, was about to discover that some things mattered more than pride, but only after it was far too late. 4 years later, Marcus stood in his corner office looking down at the city he'd conquered. At least that's what Forbes kept saying. Billionaire by 32, they'd written. The youngest self-made billionaire in the tech acquisition sector. A titan of industry. A visionary leader. He stared at his reflection in the window, at the silver threading through his dark blonde hair now, at the lines around his eyes that made him look distinguished instead of tired, and felt the hollowness that no amount of success ever quite filled. His assistant, Rebecca, efficient and professional and absolutely nothing like Sienna, knocked and entered simultaneously. "Your 11 o'clock is here. The team from Morrison Tech. They're eager to discuss the merger. Give me 5 minutes." He didn't turn around. Of course. She paused at the door. That particular pause that meant she had something to say but wasn't sure if she should. "Sir, I also received a call from your mother. She's confirming dinner tonight and wanted to remind you to bring that wine you promised." "Right. Tell her I'll be there." Rebecca left, and Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His mother, Diana Ashford, who'd been pestering him about settling down since he turned 30, who'd somehow gotten more persistent after his father passed 2 years ago, as if she needed to fulfill her late husband's nagging duties as well as her own. Dinner with her was always a minefield of subtle disappointment and unsubtle questions about grandchildren. His phone buzzed with a text from his college roommate, James. "Still on for basketball tomorrow? Bring your A game, old man." Marcus smiled despite himself. James was one of the few people who treated him like a regular person instead of a walking corporation. They'd remained close even after Marcus's wealth had launched him into a different stratosphere, even after most of his friendships had revealed themselves to be networking opportunities in disguise. The Morrison Tech meeting went smoothly, which meant his team did exactly what they were supposed to do while Marcus smiled and nodded and signed where they told him to sign. He'd built a machine so efficient he was sometimes redundant in his own company. A realization that should have been satisfying, but instead left him feeling strangely unnecessary. By 6, he was pulling into his mother's driveway in the suburbs, the house he'd grown up in looking smaller every time he visited. Or maybe he'd just gotten used to spaces designed to impress rather than comfort. Diana opened the door before he could knock, her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile warm in a way that made his chest tight with something he couldn't name. "My favorite son," she said, pulling him into a hug that smelled like vanilla and home. "I'm your only son, which makes you both my favorite and my biggest disappointment." She ushered him inside, taking the wine he handed her. "A Bordeaux. You remembered?" "I always remember." Dinner was pot roast, the kind she'd made every Sunday when he was growing up, when success meant making the high school basketball team, and failure meant forgetting to take out the trash. They ate and talked about safe things. Her garden club, his latest acquisition, the neighbor's new dog that wouldn't stop barking. But Marcus knew the real conversation was coming. It always did. "So," Diana said, setting down her fork with the precision of someone entering battle, "when are you going to tell me about her?" "About who?" "The woman who's had you looking like a ghost for the past 4 years. Marcus went very still. "I don't know what you mean." "Marcus Ashford." His mother's voice went sharp the way it had when he was 16 and came home past curfew. "I'm your mother. I know when you're happy, when you're stressed, and when you're carrying around heartbreak like it's a second briefcase. You've been different since that gala 4 years ago. You came to brunch the next day looking like someone had died. Nothing happened at the gala. The lie tasted bitter. Then why did your executive assistant quit that night? The one you never talked about, but whose name I heard you mention more times than you probably realized? Sienna, wasn't it? The name hit him like a physical blow. He set down his own fork, appetite gone. That was a professional matter. Nothing about the way you looked was professional, sweetheart. Diana reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. I watched you build walls after your father's expectations, almost crushed you. I understood why you needed to prove yourself, why the business consumed you. But whoever she was, she got through those walls, didn't she? And you let her walk away. She left. The words came out harsh. She quit without warning, in front of my entire board, made me look like a fool. Or maybe she got tired of being treated like a secret. His mother's gaze was gentle but unflinching. Your father did that too, you know. Kept the important things private, the emotions locked away, everything measured by how it looked to the world. It killed him, Marcus. All that pressure, all that performance. I don't want it to kill you too. I'm fine. You're alone. There's a difference. Marcus pulled his hand back, standing. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. Running won't change the truth. Diana stood too, walking him to the door. Life isn't a business deal, my love. You can't negotiate with time, and you can't acquire back the moments you waste. If you loved her, if you let her slip away because of pride or fear or whatever poison your father planted in your head about what success means, then fix it. Find her. Apologize. Live a life that's about more than board meetings and bottom lines. What if it's too late? Then at least you'll know you tried. Marcus drove home through streets that felt too empty, his mother's words echoing louder than the radio he turned up to drown them out. Sienna. He hadn't let himself think about her in years, had buried the memory under work, and more work, and carefully curated dates with women who expected nothing and received less. But alone in his car, in the dark, he let himself remember. Her laugh, the real one, not the professional one she used with clients, but the unguarded sound she'd make when he said something unexpectedly funny, the way she'd absently twist her hair when she was concentrating on a problem, how she'd bring him tea at midnight, not coffee, because she'd noticed caffeine made him restless. The night she'd fallen asleep in his office chair, and he'd carried her to the couch, and she'd murmured his name in her sleep, and he'd felt something terrifying and wonderful crack open in his chest. He'd told himself it was just convenient attraction, just proximity and long hours and 2 adult satisfying physical needs. He'd told himself he was protecting her by keeping it private, that the scrutiny would hurt her career. He'd told himself 100 lies and believed them, because the truth was more terrifying than any hostile takeover. He'd loved her with an intensity that made him want to burn down everything he'd built just to see her smile. And that love terrified him more than failure ever could, so he'd treated it like a weakness, hidden it, denied it, destroyed it through neglect until she had no choice but to leave. 4 years. Where was she now? What was she doing? Had she found someone who deserved her? Someone brave enough to love her in daylight? Someone who didn't need his mother to tell him he'd thrown away the best thing in his life? Marcus pulled into his building's underground garage. His penthouse was immaculate and empty. He poured himself a scotch and stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone buzzed. James again. Forgot to ask, "Can I bring my kids to basketball tomorrow?" Marcus typed back. "Sure, looking forward to it." He went to bed in sheets that felt exactly as empty as they had every night for 4 years. Somewhere, Sienna was living a life he knew nothing about. Marcus closed his eyes and tried not to calculate how many nights he'd wasted like this. Sleep came eventually, dreamless and cold. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine that felt like mockery. Marcus drove to the basketball court where he met James every other weekend. James's 2 kids were already running around. "Uncle Marcus." Tyler crashed into his legs. "Watch this." He attempted a layup that went sideways. "Very impressive," Marcus said. Madison watched him with wise eyes. "You look sad," she announced. James laughed. "Maddie, we don't tell people they look sad." "Why not? If they're sad, maybe they need a hug." She wrapped herself around his leg. "There. Now you're better." They played basketball, which mostly meant chasing loose balls. During a water break, James sat next to him. "So, you going to tell me what's wrong? Or are we going to keep pretending?" "I am fine." "Marcus, I've known you 14 years now. I know when something is eating you alive bad. This is one of those moments." "Uncle Marcus." The 7-year-old Tyler crashed into his legs with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. "Watch this. Watch this." He proceeded to attempt a layup that somehow went completely sideways. "Very impressive," Marcus said, "because that's what you said to children, even when they defied the laws of physics in the wrong direction." The 5-year-old Madison was more reserved, watching him with those unnervingly wise eyes children sometimes had. "You look sad," she announced. "Are you sad? Are you?" James laughed, scooping her up. "Maddie, we don't tell people they look sad." "Why not?" "If they're sad, maybe they need a hug." Marcus felt something uncomfortable lodge in his throat. "I'm not sad, just tired. That's what sad people say." Madison wriggled out of her father's arms and wrapped herself around Marcus's leg like a barnacle. "There. Now you're better." And somehow, Inexplicably, he did feel slightly better, or at least more present, more real, than he'd felt in weeks. They played basketball, or what passed for basketball when two children were involved, which mostly meant chasing loose balls and pretending to be impressed by shots that came nowhere near the basket. During a water break, James sat next to him on the bench, mopping sweat from his forehead. "So, you going to tell me what's actually wrong, or are we going to keep pretending you're fine?" "I am fine. Marcus. I've known you for 14 years. I know your fine face, your stressed face, your hungover face, and your something is eating you alive face. This is the last one." Marcus took a long drink of water, watching Tyler try to teach Madison how to dribble. "Work is good. Company's thriving. Just close the Morrison deal. And yet you look like you'd trade it all for a decent night's sleep." James's voice was gentle, the kind of gentle that made it hard to keep lying. "This about that woman? The one you wouldn't talk about 4 years ago but came to my house at 2 a.m. looking like you'd been hit by a truck? I didn't come to your house at 2 a.m. You did. Sarah made you scrambled eggs. You ate them without tasting them and left without saying where you'd been." Marcus had forgotten that night, or tried to. The night Sienna quit. The night he'd driven around for hours before ending up at James's door, because going home to an empty apartment felt impossible. That was a long time ago. 4 years isn't that long. Not when you're still carrying it around. James nudged him. "Look, I'm not going to push. But I will say this. I almost lost Sarah once, back in college, because I was too proud to admit I was terrified of not being good enough for her. Spent 6 months miserable before I wised up. And every day I think about how close I came to letting her go, and it makes me appreciate what I have now. Whatever happened with your person, if you can fix it, fix it. Life's too short for prideful regret. What if I can't fix it? What if she's moved on, built a whole life I'm not part of? Then at least you'll know." James stood, brushing off his shorts. "But sitting in your ivory tower wondering, that's just a slow death, man. And you're worth more than that." Tyler came running back, demanding Marcus's attention for another game, and the conversation ended. But the words stayed, mixing with his mother's advice, creating a chorus in his head that grew louder with every passing hour. Find her, apologize, at least try. By Sunday afternoon, Marcus was sitting in his home office staring at his laptop, cursor blinking in a search bar. He told himself he wouldn't do this, wouldn't give in to the urge to check on her. Sienna was the past, a closed chapter, a lesson learned about keeping professional and personal separate. Except none of that was true. She wasn't a lesson. She was the woman who'd seen him at his worst and stayed anyway, until he'd given her no choice but to leave. The woman who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and called him out when he was being unreasonable and made him feel like he was more than just the sum of his achievements. He typed her name, Sienna Parker, hit enter. The results were surprisingly sparse. No LinkedIn that he could find, which was odd for someone with her skills. No obvious social media presence. A few old articles mentioning her in connection with Ashford Industries, back when she'd been his assistant. But nothing recent. It was like she'd vanished, deliberately made herself invisible. Or maybe she'd just moved on with a life that didn't require an online presence, didn't require broadcasting every moment to the world. Maybe she'd found peace and privacy, the kind he'd never been able to afford. Marcus closed the laptop and stared out his window at the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled. He had investigators on retainer, people who could find anyone anywhere. One phone call and he'd have her address, her employment history, every detail of the past 4 years. But that felt wrong, intrusive, like exactly the kind of power play that had driven her away in the first place. If he was going to find her, it needed to be honest. It needed to be him actually putting in effort, not outsourcing his regret to professionals. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Marcus Ashford? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Valerie Chen from Portland Elementary School. I'm calling about an incident involving your children. Marcus's blood went cold. I don't have children. You've got the wrong number. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. The emergency contact form lists you as the father of Elijah and Sophia Ashford. 4-year-old twins. Their mother is Sienna Parker. The world tilted sideways. The phone nearly slipped from Marcus's hand. His vision tunneled. Those words, Sienna Parker, 4 years old, twins, rearranged everything he thought he knew about the universe. That's impossible. I assure you, Mr. Ashford, the forms are quite clear. There was an altercation today. Nothing serious. But we require a guardian to pick them up, and Miss Parker isn't answering her phone. You're listed as the secondary contact. Marcus's mouth had gone completely dry. Where did you say this was? Portland Elementary? Yes, on Maple Street. We close at 5. He checked his watch. 4:30. I'll be there. He hung up before she could say anything else, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. Twins. 4 years old. The math was devastating and exact. The night of the gala, the last time he'd been with Sienna before she'd quit, before she'd walked out of his life. She'd been pregnant, had been carrying his children while he'd stood there letting her leave, celebrating her departure like he'd won some kind of victory. 4 years. 4 years she'd been raising his children alone, and he hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. How had she kept it hidden? Why had she kept it hidden? The why was obvious, a voice in his head supplied, cruel and accurate. Why would she tell the man who'd treated her like a secret, who'd let her walk away without a fight, who'd made it clear she was replaceable? Why would she trust him with the most important thing in her life? Marcus grabbed his keys, his wallet, his coat, moving on autopilot. The drive to Maple Street took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours, his mind spinning through possibilities, through scenarios, through 4 years of missed moments he could never get back. First steps, first words, birthdays, every milestone happening without him. Portland Elementary was a cheerful building with colorful murals and a playground that looked well-loved. Marcus parked and sat for a moment trying to compose himself, trying to figure out what he was going to say. Nothing prepared you for finding out you were a father. Nothing prepared you for finding out your children had lived their entire lives without knowing you existed. He walked into the office on legs that didn't quite feel solid. A tired-looking administrator looked up from her desk. Mr. Ashford? Yes. I'm here for. He couldn't quite say it. Couldn't make the words real. The twins, Elijah and Sophia, right this way. She led him down a hallway decorated with children's artwork, each piece labeled with names and ages, tiny hands creating tiny masterpieces. She stopped at a door and knocked before opening it. Inside, 2 children sat at a small table coloring. They looked up simultaneously, and Marcus's heart stopped. They had Sienna's eyes, that exact shade of deep brown that had haunted his dreams. But they had his hair, lighter than Sienna's, his nose, his chin. The boy, Elijah, was focused and serious. The girl, Sophia, was watching him with open curiosity. Kids, this is Mr. Ashford. He's here to take you home. The administrator's voice was gentle. Sophia tilted her head. You're not Mommy. No, Marcus managed. He stopped. Couldn't say father. Couldn't claim a title he hadn't earned. I'm here to help. Where's Mommy? Elijah's voice was suspicious, protective, and Marcus recognized that tone from his own childhood, that instinct to shield loved ones from potential threats. We're trying to reach her, the administrator said. In the meantime, Mr. Ashford is going to make sure you get home safely. Your mother left his name as an emergency contact. Both children looked at him with identical expressions of uncertainty. Marcus crouched down to their level, his knees protesting, his heart trying to beat out of his chest. I know this is strange, but I promise I'm going to make sure you're safe and get back to your mom. Can you tell me your address? Sophia rattled off an address that Marcus immediately memorized. The boy stayed quiet, still watching him with those careful eyes. The administrator helped gather their backpacks, colorful things covered in dinosaurs and butterflies, respectively. Marcus signed papers that made him legally responsible for these children he'd just discovered, children who carried his DNA but knew him not at all. The walk to his car was surreal. Sophia chattered about her day, about how Jimmy had put glue in his hair during art time, and how she'd learned a song about the days of the week. Elijah walked silently, his small hand clutching his backpack strap like a lifeline. Marcus opened the back door of his expensive car, realizing too late he didn't have car seats. The administrator noticed. "They're big enough for regular seatbelts for this one trip," she said quietly. He drove carefully to the address Sophia had given, a modest neighborhood. He pulled up in front of a small blue house with flowers in the window boxes. "This is it." Sophia bounded toward the front door. Elijah followed, still watching Marcus. Marcus knocked. No answer. The house was quiet, lights off, no car in the driveway. "Mommy's probably at work," Sophia said. "She works at the hospital. Sometimes she's late." Marcus pulled out his phone. Before he could search, it rang. Unknown number again, but when he answered, the voice was blessedly familiar. "This is Sienna Parker. The school called about my emergency contact picking up my children." She sounded breathless, worried, and hearing her voice after 4 years hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I don't know who thought they should call Marcus Ashford. There must be some mistake. I need to speak to whoever has my kids. Sienna." His voice came out rough. "It's me. I have them. They're safe." The silence on the other end lasted 3 full heartbeats. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different, stripped of all professionalism, raw, with something between fury and panic. "What the hell are you doing with my children?" "Our children," he corrected quietly, the words feeling impossible even as he said them. "They're mine too, aren't they?" The silence stretched so long Marcus thought she'd hung up. Then she laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that came from somewhere dark and broken. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare call them yours. You don't get to be their father just because biology says so. You haven't earned that title, Marcus. You haven't earned anything. I know. The admission came easier than he expected. You're right. I haven't earned it. But I'm looking at them right now, Sienna. And they have your eyes and my everything else. And I can't unknow this. I can't pretend I didn't just discover I have children. You should have thought about that 4 years ago." Her voice cracked. "You should have thought about a lot of things 4 years ago. Where are you exactly?" "Your front porch. The blue house on Willow Street. They said you work at the hospital, St. Mary's. I'm a nurse in the ER. My shift ends in 20 minutes, but I can't just leave. We're understaffed and there's a trauma coming in." She let out a shaky breath. "Can you... God, I can't believe I'm asking this. Can you stay with them until I get there? It'll be an hour, maybe 90 minutes. Marcus looked through the window where Sophia was trying to pick the lock with a hairpin, while Elijah watched with resigned patience. "Of course, take whatever time you need. They're safe with me. Don't make promises you can't keep. That's what you do best, remember?" She hung up before he could respond. Marcus pocketed his phone and turned to the kids. "Your mom's working, but she'll be home soon. Looks like you're stuck with me for a bit." "Are you a stranger?" Elijah asked, finally speaking directly to him. "Mommy says we shouldn't talk to strangers." "That's very smart." Marcus crouched down again, meeting the boy's eyes. "I'm not exactly a stranger. I knew your mom a long time ago. We used to work together. Are you the reason she cries sometimes?" The question was so direct, so devastating, that Marcus physically recoiled. "Elijah," Sophia hissed. "You're not supposed to say that." "But he is. I heard Mommy on the phone with Aunt Lisa. She said a man broke her heart and that's why we don't have a daddy like other kids." Marcus felt like he'd been punched. Every word was a confirmation of damage he'd caused, consequences he'd never considered. "I think," he started, then stopped because what could he possibly say? "Yes, I broke your mother's heart. Yes. I'm the reason you grew up without a father." Sorry seemed criminally inadequate. "I think your mom is one of the strongest, most amazing people I've ever met. And I think you're both very lucky to have her. Then why did you make her cry?" Elijah's eyes were too knowing, too old for 4 years. "Because I was stupid and scared and I didn't understand what mattered." Marcus surprised himself with the honesty. "And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." Sophia tugged at his sleeve. Do you know how to make grilled cheese? I what? Mommy always makes us grilled cheese when she gets home late. I'm hungry. Marcus looked at this little girl with his nose and Sienna's smile and realized he'd never made a grilled cheese sandwich in his life. Personal chefs didn't really cover that. But I can learn. Do you have a key to get inside? It's under the frog. Sophia pointed to a ceramic frog by the door. Mommy thinks we don't know, but we totally know. Inside, the house was exactly what Marcus expected and nothing like his world. Toys organized in bins, photos covering every wall, a worn couch with a blanket draped over it, crayon drawings held to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets. It was small and lived in, and so clearly filled with love, it made his chest ache. The photos were what destroyed him. Sienna pregnant, glowing, her hand on her swollen belly. The twins as newborns, tiny and perfect. First birthdays with cake smashed on their faces. Every milestone documented, every moment preserved, and he wasn't in a single one. 4 years of life he'd missed completely. Mister, are you crying? Sophia asked. Marcus touched his face and was shocked to find it wet. There's something in my eye. Where's the kitchen? Making grilled cheese with 2 4-year-olds supervising was possibly the most stressful thing Marcus had done in years, and he'd negotiated billion-dollar mergers. Sophia insisted the bread had to be cut diagonally. Elijah wanted his cheese melted, but not too melted. Marcus burned the first attempt, undercooked the second, and finally produced something edible on the third try. They ate at a small kitchen table, and Marcus found himself fielding questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dinosaurs could beat dragons in a fight. Sophia talked enough for 3 people. Elijah watched and listened, and occasionally said something so insightful Marcus forgot he was talking to a child. Do you have kids? Elijah asked suddenly. Marcus froze with a sandwich halfway to his mouth. I didn't think I did. Until today. So, we're your kids? Biologically, yes. But being a parent is more than biology. It's showing up and being there, and Marcus gestured around the warm, love-filled house, making grilled cheese and knowing which way to cut the bread. Your mom, she's your real parent. She's the one who's been here. But you're here now, Sophia pointed out with 4-year-old logic. I am. I don't know for how long or what happens next, but right now I'm here. After dinner, Sophia demanded he play dolls with her while Elijah built an elaborate structure with blocks that defied engineering. Marcus found himself sitting on a floor that needed vacuuming, making a doll have a conversation with a stuffed dinosaur about sharing, and feeling more present than he had in years. The sound of a car door slamming made all 3 of them look up. Sophia jumped up and ran for the door. Mommy. Sienna walked in and Marcus's breath caught. She looked exhausted, her scrubs rumpled, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she was still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. She scooped Sophia into her arms, then grabbed Elijah, holding both of them like she'd been drowning and they were air. Her eyes found Marcus over their heads. Out. Now. He stood, suddenly aware of how out of place he was in his expensive suit in her modest home. Sienna put the kids down. Babies, go get ready for bath time. I need to talk to Mr. Ashford. But Mommy, we just ate and he made grilled cheese and played dolls and Sophia was talking faster than breath. Bath. Now. Please. Sienna's voice was gentle but firm. Both kids reluctantly headed down the hall. Once they were gone, Sienna turned to him, and the exhaustion was replaced by fury. 4 years, Marcus. 4 years you've been a billionaire with unlimited resources and you never once looked for me. Never once wondered. And now you show up because a school administrator called you by accident, and suddenly you care? It wasn't by accident. You listed me as an emergency contact. I listed you because legally they needed a father's name and I wasn't going to lie. I never thought they'd actually call you. I never thought you'd actually come. She wrapped her arms around herself. Why did you come? Because they're my children. Because hearing that I had kids and not showing up wasn't an option. Because... He took a step closer and she held up her hand. Don't come closer and don't say something romantic that you don't mean. I've had 4 years to get over you, Marcus. 4 years of building a life without you. I'm happy. We're happy. And I don't need you coming in here and destroying that. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I just want to know them. To be part of their lives if you'll let me. If I'll let you. She laughed bitterly. You think this is about permission? You think you can just walk in and play daddy when it's convenient? They don't know you. They don't need you. We've been fine without you. Have you? Because from where I'm standing, you're working yourself to exhaustion, raising 2 kids alone, living in a house that's falling apart. Don't you dare judge my house. This house is filled with love, which is more than I can say for whatever sterile penthouse you're living in. We may not have your money, Marcus, but we have each other. We have something real. I know. He held up his hands in surrender. I'm not judging. I'm observing. And what I'm observing is that you've done an incredible job with them, Sienna. They're smart and kind, and Elijah has your eyes, and Sophia has your spirit, and I missed all of it. I missed everything. And I know that's my fault. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I'm asking anyway. Please. Let me try to be part of this. For how long? Until it gets hard? Until your board needs you for something more important? Until you remember that having a family doesn't fit your carefully curated image? For as long as you'll let me. Forever if you'll give me the chance. Sienna stared at him, and he watched her cycle through emotions, anger, pain, something that might have been hope before she locked it down. I need to think. I need to talk to them. This isn't just about what I want, or what you want. They're the ones who matter. I agree completely. Come back tomorrow. Afternoon. We'll talk then. The 4 of us. But Marcus, if you're going to do this, you're all in. You don't get to be a part-time father. You don't get to show up when it's convenient and disappear when it's not. They deserve better than that. They deserve better than me. But I'm going to try to become someone who deserves them. Sienna's expression softened just slightly. We'll see. Now leave before they come out and ask why we're talking so seriously. Marcus nodded and moved toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. Sienna, I meant what I said 4 years ago. About you being stunning. I just didn't say all the other things I should have said. About you being brilliant and brave and the only person who ever made me feel like I was enough just as I was. Don't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't do this now. When should I do it? In another 4 years? In 10? I wasted enough time, Sienna. I'm not wasting any more. He left before she could respond, but he saw her hand come up to cover her mouth, saw the tears she was fighting. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close. But it was something. Marcus barely slept that night. He kept replaying every moment, every word the twins had said, every expression on Sienna's face. By morning, he'd made several decisions. He called Rebecca first. Clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. Everything. Sir, you have the Morrison presentation on Wednesday and the board meeting on Friday. I can't just, Rebecca started. I don't care. Delegate it, cancel it. I don't care what you have to do. I need 2 weeks completely clear. Is everything all right? Everything is complicated. But I'm working on making it right. His second call was to his lawyer. I need to set up child support payments, backdated 4 years. Maximum amount legally allowable. Mr. Ashford, who exactly are these payments for? My children. I just found out I have twins, 4 years old. Their mother never asked for anything, but that's not the point. I want them taken care of. There will be paperwork, the lawyer cautioned. DNA tests, custody arrangements. I don't want custody. I want to provide for them. Big difference. His third call was to James. I need your help. At 9 a.m. on a Sunday? This better be good. I have kids, twins, 4 years old. I just found out yesterday and I'm meeting them again today and I have no idea what I'm doing. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Then James burst out laughing. Oh man. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. Okay, I am laughing at you. You? A dad? The guy who broke out in hives when my kids wanted to sit in your lap? I need advice. What do I say? What do I do? How do I not screw this up more than I already have? First, you breathe. Second, you show up. Third, you listen. Kids don't need you to be perfect, Marcus. They need you to be present. And from what you're telling me, you missed 4 years. So now you show up, and you don't miss another day. What if I'm terrible at it? You will be. Everyone is terrible at it at first. Sarah and I had no idea what we were doing when Tyler was born. We figured it out. You will too. Now tell me about the mom. This is the woman from 4 years ago, isn't it? The one who quit? Yeah. Sienna. And? And I'm in love with her. I've been in love with her for 4 years, and I was too stupid and scared to admit it until yesterday when I saw her again and realized I've been half alive all this time. Well, James's voice was gentle. Then I guess you better figure out how to show her that. But Marcus, word of advice, grand gestures are great for movies. Real life requires showing up every day and doing the work. That's how you win her back. That's how you become the father your kids need. By 2 p.m., Marcus was standing on Sienna's porch again, this time holding a bag from the toy store he'd hit that morning. He'd spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out what 4-year-olds liked before just buying an assortment and hoping something landed. Sienna opened the door before he could knock. She looked better today, rested, wearing jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger. You're early. Eager, he corrected. She stepped aside to let him in. The twins were on the floor, some cartoon playing on the TV. They looked up when he entered. Mr. Marcus, Sophia jumped up. Did you bring toys? I might have. He held up the bag. But I don't know if they're the right ones. Sophia dove into the bag like it was Christmas. Elijah approached more cautiously. You didn't have to bring gifts, he said. I wanted to. Marcus knelt down. I missed 4 birthdays and 4 Christmases. I have a lot of catching up to do. You can't buy your way into their hearts, Sienna said quietly from behind him. I know, but I can try to learn what they like. The afternoon passed in a blur. They played with the new toys. Marcus learned that Sophia loved unicorns, and Elijah was obsessed with space. They told him about their preschool and their friends, and the neighbor's cat who visited their yard. Slowly, Elijah's walls started to come down. He showed Marcus his favorite book about planets and explained with 4-year-old seriousness about how the sun was a star, and stars were actually really far away, even though they looked small. As evening approached, Sienna made dinner while Marcus helped the kids clean up their toys. At the table, eating spaghetti that was light years better than anything his personal chef had ever made, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Belonging. Like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. After dinner, Sienna put the kids to bed while Marcus washed dishes. When she came back, she leaned against the doorframe watching him. You're full of surprises. I'm trying. He dried his hands. Can we talk? They moved to the small living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch like boxers in neutral corners. Sienna spoke first. I talked to them. About you. About what it might mean if you were in their lives. And? Sophia is excited. She's wanted a dad like her friends have. Elijah is cautious. He asked if you were going to leave again. Smart kid. Marcus swallowed hard. What did you tell him? I told him I didn't know. That only you could answer that. Then I'll tell him myself. I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here every day if you'll let me. Every morning, every night, whatever you need. Marcus, you have a company to run. You can't just put your life on hold. Why not? I've spent the last 4 years building an empire and being miserable. Yesterday, I spent 4 hours with my kids and felt more alive than I have in years. So yeah, I can put the company on hold. I can delegate. I can work remotely. Whatever it takes. Sienna was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I was so angry at you. For years. I blamed you for everything. For not fighting for me. For not caring enough to look for me. But then I realized I never told you. I never gave you the chance. I made the choice to keep them from you. Because I gave you every reason to think I didn't deserve to know. Marcus shifted closer. You protected them. That's what a good mother does. I don't blame you for that, Sienna. I blame myself for creating a situation where you felt you couldn't trust me with the truth. I was scared that you'd try to take them, that you'd use your money and your lawyers and I'd lose them. Never. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I don't want to take anything from you. I want to be part of this, part of the life you've built, if you'll have me. It's not that simple. You hurt me, Marcus, deeply. I can't just forget that. I'm not asking you to forget, I'm asking you to give me a chance to do better, to be better. What does that even look like? You showing up for dinner a few times a week? Taking them on weekends? What exactly are you offering here? Everything. Marcus turned to face her fully. I'm offering everything. I want to be here every day. I want to help with homework and bedtime stories and doctor's appointments. I want to be the person you call when you're stressed or tired or need anything at all. I want to be your partner in this, Sienna. Not just their father, but your. He hesitated. Whatever you'll let me be. Her eyes were glistening. You don't get to walk back into my life and say things like that. You don't get to make me hope again. Why not? I'm hoping. I'm hoping you'll give me another chance. I'm hoping that somewhere under all that hurt and anger, you might still feel something for me. I'm hoping I'm not too late. You're 4 years too late. Then I'll spend the next 40 making up for it. He squeezed her hand. I love you, Sienna. I loved you 4 years ago, and I was too damaged and stupid to say it. I loved you every day since, even though I tried to pretend I didn't. And I love you now, even more than before, because now I see everything you've accomplished, everything you've overcome, and you're even more incredible than I remembered. A tear slipped down her cheek. You can't just say that and expect everything to be okay. I don't. I expect it to be hard. I expect you to be angry and hurt and not trust me. I expect to have to prove myself every single day. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready for all of it. Sienna pulled her hand away and stood, pacing. I need time. This is too much, too fast. You can see the kids. You can be part of their lives. But us, I can't. I need time. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus became a fixture in their lives. He showed up every morning before work to have breakfast with the kids. He came back every evening for dinner. On weekends, they went to parks and museums and the zoo. He learned to braid Sophia's hair, mostly unsuccessfully. He helped Elijah build a model solar system. He was there when Elijah skinned his knee and needed comfort, when Sophia had a nightmare and needed reassurance. And slowly, carefully, he built something with Sienna too. Not romance, not yet, but partnership, trust, friendship. He did the dishes while she gave the kids baths. She helped him understand their schedules and preferences. They became a team, co-parents navigating this strange new reality. Marcus moved most of his work remote. His board protested until he made it clear this wasn't negotiable. He promoted his COO to handle day-to-day operations. He showed up to the office twice a week and worked from Sienna's dining table the rest of the time, taking breaks to play with the kids or help with errands. One evening, about a month in, they were sitting on the porch after the kids were asleep. Sienna was drinking tea, Marcus had coffee, and the neighborhood was quiet except for crickets and the distant sound of someone's television. Thank you, Sienna said quietly, for showing up, for staying, for proving me wrong about you. You weren't wrong about who I was. I was exactly as selfish and short-sighted as you thought. I'm just trying to be better now. You are better. She looked at him. The kids love you. Sophia told me yesterday that she's glad she has a daddy now. Elijah actually smiled when he told his friend at school about you. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That means everything. And Sienna hesitated. I'm starting to remember why I fell for you in the first place. When you let your guard down. When you're just yourself without the billionaire armor. You're this funny, thoughtful person who makes me laugh and actually listens and... She stopped. I'm saying too much. You're not saying enough. He set down his coffee and shifted closer. Sienna, I know you needed time. I know I have to earn this. But I have to know. Is there a chance? Any chance at all that we could be more than co-parents? I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared you'll realize this is too hard. That we're too complicated. That your life was easier before and you'll want to go back. My life was emptier before. Easier isn't always better. This, right here, with you and them. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's also the only thing that's ever actually mattered. Sienna set down her tea and turned to face him. If we do this, if we try this, you need to understand something. I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. I don't need you to take care of me financially. I don't need rescuing. I've built a good life for myself and my kids. What I need is a partner, an equal, someone who respects what I've accomplished. I do respect it. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I need you to understand that they come first. Always. If being with me means being a father to them, and not just when it's fun but through the tantrums and the teenage years and everything else, then I need to know you're ready for that. I've never been more ready for anything. She studied his face for a long moment. Then okay. We can try. Slowly. No grand gestures, no rushing. We take it one day at a time and we see where it goes. One day at a time, he agreed. Can I kiss you? Not yet. She smiled, though, the first real smile she'd given him since he walked back into her life. But soon, maybe. Soon was 2 weeks later, after a particularly chaotic day where Sophia had thrown up at preschool. Elijah had gotten in a fight defending his sister's honor, and they'd all ended up covered in bathwater after the kids decided bathing was optional. They were standing in her kitchen, both of them soaked and exhausted and laughing at the absurdity of it all, when she grabbed his collar and pulled him down to her. The kiss was tentative at first, testing, remembering. Then it deepened into something more. 4 years of longing and loss and love finally finding its way home. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Sienna kept her forehead pressed to his. I love you too, she whispered. I never stopped. I tried to, but I never could. Marry me, Marcus said before he could stop himself. She laughed. We just had our first kiss in 4 years and you're proposing? Too soon? Way too soon. Ask me again in 6 months. So he did. 6 months later, on Christmas morning, with the twins bouncing around the living room in their pajamas, Marcus got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. This time when he asked, Sienna said yes. They got married in her backyard 6 months after that, surrounded by the people who mattered. James and his family. Sienna's sister, Lisa, who'd been her support system through everything. Marcus's mother, Diana, who wept through the entire ceremony. And Elijah and Sophia, dressed up and proud, serving as ring bearer and flower girl. Marcus sold his penthouse, and they bought a bigger house together, one with a yard for the kids and an office for him and room for the life they were building. He stayed on as chairman of Ashford Industries, but gave up day-to-day control. His company thrived without his constant interference. Turned out empowering good people to do their jobs worked better than micromanaging everything. Sienna cut back her hours at the hospital to part-time. Not because Marcus pushed her, but because she wanted more time with the family. They found their rhythm, this blended life of school pickups and date nights and lazy Sunday mornings. Some days were hard. They fought about discipline and schedules and the best way to handle Sophia's stubbornness or Elijah's anxiety. But they fought fair, and they made up. And they kept choosing each other. 2 years after they married, Sienna was pregnant again. A boy they named James, after Marcus's best friend, who'd pushed him to fix his life. The twins were ecstatic about their baby brother. Elijah was protective and gentle. Sophia was bossy and helpful in equal measure. Marcus's 39th birthday fell on a Saturday. He woke to find his entire family piled into bed with him, baby James drooling on his chest, Sophia's elbow in his ribs, Elijah reading a book about black holes inches from his face, and Sienna watching them all with amusement. Happy birthday, old man, she said, leaning over to kiss him. Best birthday ever, he replied, meaning it completely. They went to the park later, all 5 of them. Marcus pushed Sophia on the swings while Sienna nursed James on a bench. Elijah brought him dandelions he'd picked, the weeds looking like treasures. In 4 years, this kid he'd discovered by accident had become his favorite person to talk to about everything from existential questions to why pizza was the superior food. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Marcus and Sienna sat on their back deck watching the stars. She was curled into his side, his arm around her shoulders, her hand resting on his chest over his heart. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" she asked. "If the school hadn't called you? If we'd never found each other again?" "Every day. And then I stopped thinking about it because I can't imagine this not existing. Can't imagine not knowing them, not having this. We almost missed it. We almost missed all of it. But we didn't. That's what matters. We found our way back." She tilted her head up to look at him. "Do you regret it? The 4 years we lost? I regret the pain I caused you. I regret missing their first steps and words and years. But I can't regret the journey that led us here, because here is perfect. Even with the chaos, even with the exhaustion and the compromise and all the ways your life is completely different than it was. Especially because of all that. The old life wasn't living, Sienna. It was just existing. This is living. This is everything." She smiled and settled back against him. "I'm glad you found us. I'm glad you stayed. I'm glad you became the man I always knew you could be. I'm glad you gave me the chance." They sat in comfortable silence, and Marcus thought about the Marcus from 5 years ago, standing at his window alone, thinking success was measured in deals and dollars. That Marcus had no idea what he was missing. Had no idea that real wealth was measured in sticky hands holding yours, in bedtime stories that took 3 tries, in a partner who called you out when you were wrong and celebrated with you when you were right, in ordinary moments that somehow became extraordinary simply because you were sharing them with people you loved. The school administrator who'd called him that day had apologized later for the mix-up. Marcus had sent her the biggest gift basket he could find. It wasn't a mix-up. It was fate, karma, the universe deciding he'd been alone long enough. He'd been celebrated when Sienna left. His board had seen it as removing a distraction. His competitors had seen it as him staying focused. He'd seen it as dodging a bullet, avoiding complications, staying free. 4 years later, standing in front of those children who didn't know him, he'd cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization of everything he'd almost lost forever. The love he'd thrown away. The family he'd nearly missed. The life he'd been too afraid to claim. Now, 5 years after that moment, Marcus Ashford was truly rich. Not in the ways Forbes measured, though he still had plenty of that kind of wealth too. He was rich in the ways that mattered. Rich in love and laughter and purpose. Rich in sleepless nights with sick kids and chaotic mornings and quiet evenings. Rich in second chances and hard-won forgiveness and the daily choice to show up and do better. Sophia and Elijah would grow up knowing their father loved them, not from a distance, not through checks and occasional visits, but through presence and participation and the 1,000 small ways you showed love every single day. They'd know they were wanted, cherished, fought for, and Sienna, his Sienna, who'd been strong enough to leave him and brave enough to let him back in, she'd never doubt again that she was loved completely, publicly, proudly. He made sure everyone knew. His board, his employees, his mother, anyone who would listen. This was his family. This was his priority. This was his everything. As they finally headed inside, Marcus took one last look at the stars. Thanks, he thought to whoever or whatever had orchestrated that phone call 4 years ago. Thanks for not letting me miss this. Thanks for giving me back what I'd thrown away. Thanks for my family. Inside, he locked the door and turned off the lights. Sienna was already heading up the stairs. Coming? Always, he replied, following her up to their room where their whole life together waited. Wonderfully messy and beautiful and absolutely right.